Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the longest running Bigfoot podcast on Blog Talk Radio. The original Squatchdetective Radio, featuring your hosts, Steve Coles and Chris Bennett. 3 decades of Bigfoot research, 2 decades of Bigfoot radio. Here we go.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, the whole night, this isn't a man.
And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
There are thousands of perfect people whose word would be good on any other subject who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal, and that is a fact.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatchdetective Radio for today's date, April 8th, 2018. I am your host, your guide, the Squatchdetective Steve Coles, along with my co-host. Well, let's just say he's my co-host. Hello, Chris Bennett.
How you doing, Mr. Steve Cole, sir?
I had nothing funny to say tonight, not a thing.
It's been nice and cool here in Kentucky. Of course, I guess we got it better than you guys in New York, but we actually got some snow here the other day after Easter, which is really rare for this area. But maybe it's going to be a cooler summer this year or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I hope not. So much for global warming. So
yeah, really.
Well, anyway, what a show we have. We've been away for the last couple of weeks. Had a lot going on. Last weekend I was at Squatchdetective evening with Cliff Barrickman out there in Hadley, Mass.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a wonderful event. And we, of course, took Sunday off for Easter, so I hope everybody had a great Easter, got their fill of the Easter ham. And this weekend, I've had my butt squarely sat down at the Saratoga Comic-Con, which is just about 6 miles down the road from me, and it was a great time. Usually Comic-Cons can be hit or miss. This one was definitely a hit. A lot of people were coming out relating stories or relating their families or friends' stories, and funny thing was we've had him on the show before, Paul Bartholomew, one of the authors of Monsters of the Northwoods, and all of a sudden this kid comes up to me looking very familiar, and he starts talking. He goes, "Yeah, I'm a Bartholomew too. I'm Paul's son." So it was just really cool to have him on board. So it was really cool. It was really cool. Good. It was a good time, and a little tiring when you're going from 9 o'clock in the morning until I don't know why people want to send me messages when they know I have a radio show.
Well, I'm playing in the chat room here too, Steve. So I'm not helping much, buddy.
No, I got bells and whistles going on this computer, and I'm like, oh, who the hell? You know I have a radio show.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So they're actually listening to me in the car. That's what they want to. You've caused Mr. Michael. You've caused a conundrum here. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Bells and whistles and. But
well, you know what, man? This chat room we got going on here, Steve. This is one of the most informative chat rooms I think in the whole industry, because we got people in here that are very knowledgeable. They're giving out, headline stories, interesting stories in the news. Kite Squatch, he popped up one story there about some lady at a mud bog got struck by lightning in Florida.
Yeah. And very tragic. I saw
incredible.
That.
Yeah, incredible. I really hate that for.
Keep the stories coming, guys.
Yeah.
But the last couple of weeks, Squatch-wise, I mean, we do know that the Bigfoot lawsuit has been dropped for now, and it is now in the hands of some lawyers who have volunteered. And I believe the lawyers are actually out of Texas, which makes it even more interesting.
Yeah.
At least that's what I read. It could be wrong. I don't know, but very, very interesting stuff going on there. It'd be interesting to see how that all plays out with a new date or something, but who knows? It's been quiet, and hopefully it continues on, because obviously it's a very interesting story to follow. But without further ado, I want to bring on our guest for tonight. He is our wonderful leader at the Pennsylvania Cryptozoological Society, and it's our old friend and guest, Mr. Eric Altman. Eric, how are you tonight, my brother?
I'm very honored to be back with you guys again. It's been a long time.
It has. It's good to be bringing the show back, and of course, having you on again. And it's good to have a good friend on, and somebody that, actually I've had a lot of interaction with the last couple of years with the wonderful Bigfoot camping adventure, and that's been a lot of fun. And
it's been a blast, and I'm glad you've been a part of it.
And I will always be a part of it. All you have to do is ask. And it's
cool.
And I'll tell you, the last one out we were plagued with a little bad weather, but what can you do? There's not really there's really not much you can do about that, I suppose. You just grin and bear it and dig it out. And believe it or not, I think the guests were all on board with that. I mean, the Mountain Monsters guys, they waddled through the mud like the rest of us, and I thought that was, very, very nice of them to do that. And so, anyway.
Well, there's a secret way, Steve. There's a secret way that you can fix up like those planned events that are set for a certain date in the future. When you get ready to leave, just start packing all your rain gear, all your wet weather stuff, and then when you get there, it will not rain.
Hey, Eric, maybe that should be a standing order for everybody there.
Yeah, that's probably the best idea I've heard so far.
Pack all your rain gear. It definitely won't rain then.
That's right.
Well, you know what? It's exactly true, because I bought myself a new spring jacket a few days ago, and since then it hasn't been over 32 degrees. I'm like, well, that figures. It's like you buy a new pair of sunglasses and you don't see the sun for 2 weeks. But
oh man,
son of a what the. But anyway, Eric, what's new in the world? What's going on?
Well, not a whole lot here in Pennsylvania. It's been kind of quiet the last couple of years, which has been nice for me. But I have gotten some recent reports of some possible activity that I've been following up on and checking out. And I was out in the woods this past week for a nice little hike. Matter of fact, you've been doing some research from the book The Creature, written by Jan Clement, and I've been down in that area of Fayette County poking around the woods, and I did get a report from a wildlife biologist actually reported this to our good friend Dave Dragazin, who forwarded it to me, that while he was out, he had something whooping at him and breaking branches and knocking on wood. So as soon as I got the message about that, I was out in the woods that next morning checking it out, and I didn't have anything happen, but that area is right where Jan Clement wrote about The Creature in.
Oh. That's right. And for people who don't know, the book The Creature, written by under a pseudonym of Jan Clement, the book was first published in 1976, and it was really one of the, if not the first book on a Bigfoot habituation scenario. And it really wasn't necessarily time specific. In other words, reading the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but it doesn't really seem to tell you this whole stretch of exactly how long this had occurred over a time span. But we do know it started sometime circa 1972-73. We know it ended in 73. But
yeah, and
so
that matter of fact, that time period in 73, was a huge outbreak of Bigfoot sightings in southwestern Pennsylvania that Stan Gordon was investigating. So it fits right in the timeline with that outbreak of sightings, and there were quite a number of them going on in Fayette County at that time.
Yep. And if I do recall, Stan is mentioned by name in the book as some of the other Bigfoot witnesses. Yep. And so we have this, and this is really a great discussion because this is Bigfoot history, old ancient Bigfoot history that really nobody has kind of. Lauren Coleman did talk to the publisher of the book, the man who bought the manuscript from allegedly Jan Clement, a guy by the name of John Tomical. And apparently he bought this thing for $400, and he had it published by Allegheny Press. And there's been, I believe, 3 volumes since, or 3 editions with updates on each edition. And this stuff is Bigfoot lore because this stuff, like I said, 1973. Actually, it was published in 76. So you're talking this book is now, 42 years old. And to this day, the identity of Jan Clement has been a mystery. However, and I'm going to preempt this very carefully. Just keep on the lookout in the future because we have a very good lead on who Mr. Clement really is. So we're still doing our due diligence, and I know I've promised Eric I'm going to pop down to the area real soon, and we're going to do a little scouting of the areas which are particularly mentioned in Mr. Clement's book. And I know David put me into contact with a gentleman who was a local there, has lived there all his life, and actually knows of a place called Clement's Point, which by all means looks like the actual area the gentleman was talking about. So,
wow. Yeah, it's a very rare and hard to find book. You might be able to find it at a Bigfoot conference, someone's selling it, or you might get lucky and find it on eBay, but it's a very rare book, and I don't believe it's still in print. You'd have to find it online, but it is very well worth the read. A lot of people think it's a fictional book, but he describes a lot of things in that book, especially being released in 1976, that really ring true today to what we know about the creature itself and the habits and a lot of its behavior. And I think it's more factual than it is fiction.
It does seem like it's very well. Just so you know, Eric, I've just put the Amazon link to the book in the chat room.
Oh,
you
good.
can
So
get
it is
on
available.
Amazon.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. If you have Amazon Prime, it's $9.95. So it's not an expensive investment at all. It's about 100 pages long, maybe a little bit longer. But interesting read. And you're right. There are some things in there that are very, very true to what we know today. And but there are some things in there that are kind of a little far-fetched. And I know
just a little.
I know Lauren caught some heat over one of those particular events, and that had to do with a particular bovine.
Yeah. Don't go there, Steve. Just don't go there.
Let's just say it was a very moving experience.
Hey, Bigfoot's got to do what a Bigfoot's got to do.
That's it.
Let's just move along
from that particular. Moving on. But yes. And then of course there was a little ride the creature was taking on, which was kind of seemed to be a little bit odd. Other than that, pretty much on. Now, the question I would have, Eric, and was this something, because it was published in 76, and we know that there was a flap going on in 73, is it possible that this book was written after the flap, thrown together to reflect upon the actual events, and basically inspired by the events of 73, and it is a complete, total work of fiction? That's a possibility.
Well, it very well could be. It very well could be. A lot of the reports that were out in the newspaper at that time And the stories that were published in the newspaper didn't have a lot of detail to them. And Stan wasn't really going around and lecturing at that time. He was more or less in the field, boots to the ground, investigating cases. So although it was very well known that there was a lot of activity, the only way that this gentleman would have gotten details that he put in the book is if he would have talked to some of the eyewitnesses who were experiencing things that were going on and got details about the behavior and different things the creature would supposedly do. Because at that time, even if the book came out in 76, Stan wasn't out there lecturing to anybody really. He was still in the field,
Gotcha.
still doing research, and you know, a lot of that information was publicly known through newspaper reports and probably word of mouth of eyewitnesses, but there wasn't a lot of detail to it. So it's hard to say whether or not that book may have been fiction written based on the events of 73, but it's a good possibility.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it has me perplexed, but there is a little bit of, and I don't want to ruin the book for anybody, but we got to give a few spoilers away, so if you're planning on reading the book, accept the spoilers. And if anybody has a question, because I've read the book a couple of times already, actually have highlighted stuff, and so Eric has had that book for years, so and very knowledgeable on it as well. So if anybody wants to give us a shout, our call-in number is area code 646-668-2982. That's 646-668-2982. And I don't know. There, like I said, it's a very interesting mystery because with everything, there is some things that are very positive, leaning towards the story being a true story, and there's some things that may lean towards being a fiction story. And not all of those little nuggets I can give away until I'm ready to really put that out there in a blog and or an article. And I'm sure what we'll do is we'll have you come on and perhaps Dave Dragosin, and we'll once we're ready to break the story, and we'll break it here on the radio show. And I think that would be a real
cool.
fun thing. You know.
Yeah.
But,
well, you certainly have done your homework as far as digging into this case, and I had a pretty good idea of where Jan's supposed cabin was, and I based that on what's written in the book and a lot of the current sightings that are going on, the historical and current sightings that are going on. So I had a pretty good idea of the general area, but you've really got down and dirty with some of the details and who Jan supposedly is, or possibly is, and the location. So my hat's off to you for that work you've done.
Oh, thank you. And it's fascinating as you peel the onion back. You know, for me, it's just like, wow, every little step gets a little more interesting, has its own little twists and turns. And, you know, I think when we finally get this figured out. But like I say, there is a if this is true, there's a booty, a prize at the end of the trail. And that is that, you know, Clement actually buries the creature after it dies. And we've kind of narrowed that down to within a maybe quarter of a mile. And it wasn't that hard in looking at what he had said, but if you look at stuff today, you wouldn't find it. So I had to dig into some old overhead photos from years ago to actually find the proper area of where he went. And only through doing that the actual what he said made sense versus the modern day maps. So it was a lot. It was a lot of work for a couple of days, but it kept me busy. That's for sure. And it's a very fascinating story, whether it's fiction or it's fact. It is a fascinating story. His experiences with the creature that he ended up calling Kong, and it's the behaviors that it had and what it did, and a little bit of talk about the bovine experience and some other things that went on the car ride and how the creature showed back up at his cabin again. It's a really interesting read, and if anybody gets a chance, I thought it was out of print, but as you mentioned, it's available on Amazon Kindle and Amazon, the website, to purchase for a reasonable price. I think I paid like $40, $45 for it a few years ago when it was out of print, and it was pretty hard to get. But I'm glad to hear it's back in print again. Well, you probably got the first edition. At least I hope.
I couldn't tell you. I don't have the book in front of me.
Well, the second and third editions have some of the updates in there, and actually, due to those updates, it actually led to solving the puzzle a little bit easier, and that's really what did it when he made. And out of some of the nuggets there's only one left that we really haven't been able to uncover just yet. I think once we get boots on the ground to Clement's point, we will end up having an answer to that. So, and if that's the case, then we know definitely where it happened. Because right now, from what I can see on the satellites, it definitely looks like the right place. So once we actually get eyes on it to see if there is an old structure there, then we will be able to rightly place this as the location. So really exciting stuff. Chris, any questions on this stuff?
Well, that would be cool. I mean, I think you think it's possible? I mean, it could be a mixture of fact and fiction. A lot of writers will do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Eric, what do you think? Yeah,
it very well could be. There could be some things that he threw in based on what he knew or heard about the 73 flap, and he could have added some of his own experiences. If
there's some way that Steve puts his investigator boots on and gets down there and locates a mound, I mean, even just a finger bone, anything, I mean, that would do it.
Yep, that's all it would take.
Yep. And I've shown both Eric and Dave Dragusin some of the stuff, and I think they were pretty jaw-dropped when all that stuff kind of matched up.
Kite's got a question.
Fire away.
Chat room, Steve. Says from Kite Squatch says, question for Eric or Steve. The Amazon page you linked mentions the author and the translator. Was the book written in something other than English?
I believe, according to Mr. Tomical, who is the publisher, it was written in English. And from what I understand, it was according to the interview with, and I could be wrong. I mean, I've read so much on this, but I know he had spoke with Lauren Coleman in 2010, and Lauren was trying to take a fresh look at this. And it was based on basically John Tomical being, if you manipulate Tomical's last name, it's very close to Clement, almost like it's an anagram, because all those, and from what I understand, it was written in English and it was handwritten. It wasn't typed. So, but he does
that
say,
may be what it is. Yeah.
Yep. So, I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't actually catch that. But that's very interesting, and that may be actually, I think, a clue to throwing us off a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's possibly, they got John Tomical listed as the translator because he's the one that went from took it from a written copy to like a typed edition. That might be the deal.
Very well could be, because I myself have not seen anything in other reference to Mr. Tomical to being anything as a translator. I've never seen that. That's actually the first time I've actually seen that, and that's on an Amazon description. So, don't know. But, I don't know, Eric, your thoughts?
I've never heard it being translated into a different language or anything to that extent. I have no idea. That's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah. Very interesting that Mr. Tomical says that, he created the name Chan Clement because that was one of his ancestors. So like a grandfather or something. That was, as he put it, from the old country. I don't know. There's a lot of mystique involved in this, but I will give another little hint that not only is Tomical could be manipulated to be almost Clement, but in a lot of languages, Jan also is the equivalent of John. So
yeah,
true.
Because you go to a foreign language, it's Jan.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So it is very, very similar. So completely, it could have been created by Mr. Tomical. So very interesting
Well,
stuff.
this is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And let me. I actually have some of the book. He calls the area, and it's kind of funny because he calls the area from his home. He calls it the Diggins. And
Yep.
The funny thing is that there's no map reference or any geological reference to a place called the Diggins. So is that a local name that people, created for that? Absolutely. One of the things he says, and this is, I'll give you a quick little quip of what we. No, that's the cow. It figures. I open the book and it goes right to the bovine.
Move along, Steve. Move along.
Well, I'm trying to move to another page.
Next week we're going to have the cow on as a guest.
Yes, she's part of the Moo 2 movement. Okay, here we. Oh no, but there's. I'm just trying to pull up some sort of description that. And every time I do it, there's a reference to a cow.
Yeah, I think maybe that Amazon reference about the translator guy listing what's his name, John Tomical as the translator. It's probably meant transcriber, maybe.
Who knows? I don't. Here's an interesting little quip about communicating with Kong, and this is pages 38 and 39. It says, I tried to communicate with Kong from the very beginning of our association. He and I would mostly just stare into each other's face for hours at a time. He seemed incapable of speech or speech-like sounds other than screeching or giving a soft whimper. Once, when I tried to move his mouth to form words, he inadvertently bit my finger and it bled fiercely. I remember whipping my finger out of his mouth and the blood splattering against the middle side of the cabin. It was my right index finger, and the damage was in the middle of the middle joint. I soaked it in Scotch whiskey, which burned. I considered getting a tetanus shot or checking to see if it needed stitches, but it had bled so much that I considered this unnecessary. I remember cursing and yelling at Kong, but he just looked at me with a stupid, quizzical expression. And then it says, yelling at Kong made no impression on him, but if I yelled at him and waved my arms and jumped up and down, he would get nervous and back away. I could always get him to back off by jumping up and down and yelling. In fact, by jumping up and down and yelling, I can get most any person or animal to back off quickly. So there is a little bit of humor with it. But
yeah.
But just those little minor observations. I mean, who would think of something like that? I don't know. It would have to be somebody that has a lot of knowledge about animal research, I would think, or having done animal research. So.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you got somebody knowledgeable about animal research down here. They're not going to be sticking their fingers in the Sasquatch's mouth either, I wouldn't think.
Yep. And of course, Kite. Yeah, that's what you get. That's what happens when you stick your finger in my mouth, stupid human.
Yeah, I believe it.
But yeah, that the whole scenario of that book is the whole premise of the book is very interesting, and the foreword, it says from the editor, and we'll give you a little bit about the actual introduction, which I probably should have done in the beginning, but this story began back in 1975 when John Tomical, then editor and publisher with Allegheny Press, met the author, who would become Jan Clement, at a science education conference in southwestern Pennsylvania. According to interviews on the internet, John Tomical paid the author $400 for the publication and all rights to the work. 600 copies were printed and advertised, and close to 100 copies were sold, and the excess copies were put in a landfill. Little known to the publisher and editor, the book had circulated among Bigfoot enthusiasts. I guess that's us. And was frequently cited in works of that genre. The knowledge of this came about slowly. So, and then it goes on to say that, he had, after 30 years, he had passed. Tomical asked Allegheny Press to publish an anniversary edition, yada, yada, yada. And now that the print-on-demand industry is picked up, that's why the book is readily available now. So anybody wants the book, it's a pretty entertaining read. It's $10 read if you want to blow away a day. If you want to try to figure out the puzzle and try to put some pieces back together and want to shout them out to me and see what I think, or shout them out to Eric and see what he thinks, go for it. I heartily encourage that. Just do not harass the players. That's all I say, and out of respect to Mr. Tomical, who is now 90 years old. So,
yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So, I don't know, Eric. The book describes Chestnut Ridge, and I know the Chestnut Ridge area all too well. And, how many sightings are we talking about in that area?
Oh, my gosh. Hundreds and hundreds. Yep. Every year, the reports come in every year. We get reports up and down the Chestnut Ridge. And for people who don't know what the Chestnut Ridge area is, it's the western furthest glacial ridge of the Appalachian Mountain Train here in Pennsylvania. It runs from Indiana County 100 miles south into Preston, West Virginia, and it runs through Indiana County, Westmoreland County, and Fayette County. And to quote a newspaper reporter who wrote on the Chestnut Ridge in the 1970s or in the early 1980s, they call it the Twilight Zone of Pennsylvania because everything and anything strange and unusual happens on the Chestnut Ridge. You've got cryptid creature sightings. You've got dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of thousands, of UFO reports. Yep. And I'm not exaggerating. There's so many UFO reports that come out of there. Hauntings, haunted locations, just so many odd phenomenon happen in the Chestnut Ridge. And the Bigfoot sightings, I can't even give you a date as to when the first Bigfoot sighting took place in the Chestnut Ridge, but it was in the 1800s. Stan Gordon, who we all pretty much are familiar with, has dedicated 60-plus years of his life to researching cases of creatures and UFOs in the Chestnut Ridge. I've dedicated most of my life. This is my 21st year in the field investigating cases, and almost 38 years I've been investigating and researching and looking into cases in the Chestnut Ridge, reading about them, studying them, and they still go on. Like I said, I was out in the woods just earlier this week investigating a possible Bigfoot encounter in Fayette County in the area we were talking about, Jan Clement and his book, and I had a report a couple weeks ago from the Ridge, and our good friend Dave Dragazin had a sighting of a creature in the Chestnut Ridge, and so many people have had so many experiences in the Chestnut Ridge. It's unbelievable to fathom how much activity goes on out there.
Well, the one story that really stands out to me is that pipeline story, where there's a pipeline that runs and there's a cut, and they saw it was a couple or a family had actually seen, I think 2 or 3 of them scooting across the cut. Just amazing.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. In 2009, I investigated a mother-daughter sighting of a creature crossing a gas well line pipeline down in Fayette County, not far from where we have the annual Bigfoot camping adventure. There's so many sightings that come out of Fayette County. It's unbelievable. We've got a lot of good researchers down there investigating and following up on cases, and some of the most strangest cases you probably have ever heard have come out of Fayette County. One of my favorite cases, and I'll share this real quick, this happened in 1974 that Stan investigated. A woman living in a remote cabin had issues with wild dogs coming to her property and going through her garbage and stuff. One night, she was in her house by herself. Now, she lived in this I guess you call it cabin or house in the Ohio Pile area of Fayette County, and her son lived not too far away in a mobile home. And while she was home that night, she heard rustling around outside, banging, garbage cans banging, and she figured the wild dogs had returned. And she got up, grabbed a shotgun, and was going to go open the back door to her house and fire a shot out into the woods to scare these dogs off. But can you imagine her surprise when she opened the back door and standing 10 feet away from her on the back steps was a Bigfoot. She called it a big ape. And she held the shotgun up. It put its arms up in the air like as if to say, don't shoot. And she just and got instant reaction, just blasted. And when she did, in a flash of light, the Bigfoot just disappeared. And that freaked her out. She shut the door. Her son heard the gunshot, called her mother, and said, what's going on? And she told him, and he rushed over to her house. And while he was on his way over there, he had a pistol in his hand. He was surrounded by several of these creatures. He could see their reddish eyes shine in the tree line. And he just started shooting at them. And they called the state police, and the state police were involved. And at that time, it was during a gas strike, and the National Guard was out protecting gas stations and whatnot because of the fuel shortage. And the National Guard accompanied the state police with Stan Gordon to the scene, and they were actually able to recover some of the shell fragments out of some of the trees where the son had shot at these creatures as he tried to make his way to his mother's house. So it's one of the more fascinating cases out of Fayette County that happened in the 1970s.
Now, I know some people would be quick to say that she shot and the creature just disappeared. Well, think about it from her perspective. You fire the shotgun, there's a muzzle flash.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that flash causes you, for about 5-10 seconds, to be a little night blind. So it's entirely possible it could have just skedaddled off, and by the time her vision actually, the rhodopsin in her eyes refilled to give her night vision, it was gone. So, I don't want everybody to take that as being a paranormal thing, as just something naturally occurring.
Oh, well, man, I thought maybe Bigfoot had summoned the wormhole and then stepped inside. Disappeared like that, right?
Would there be a certain? Never mind. I'm not gonna go there.
There's so many fascinating things that have happened in the Chestnut Ridge over the years, and I've been very fortunate to be at some of these events that have happened, investigating cases, going out and doing field work, and having experiences myself. There's so many that I could recount. We don't have enough time to do it, but just so many things that I've experienced and I've seen, and there's been even some things that I can't explain when I've been out in the woods. I just have no rational explanation for that I don't have words for. But the Chestnut Ridge itself is just a really fascinating place. And if I can throw out a cheap plug, our good friend Seth Breedlove did a documentary film called Invasion on Chestnut Ridge through Small Town Monsters. And Stan and I are featured in the documentary, and we talk about some of these strange cases that have taken place on the Chestnut Ridge. And it's a really good documentary. I think anybody that wants to check it out, it's on Amazon. You can watch it and hear some of these stories.
And I just saw that a few weeks ago myself, because a lot of people don't know this, or maybe you do. But actually, we're going to have Seth on in a couple of 2-3 weeks from now. So,
cool.
And he can,
from the chat, I have a question for Eric from the chat from Kite Squatch. Eric, Kite wants to know, did the outdoor tour from your 2008 conference visit that gas pipeline location?
From the 2008, I don't believe we did so in 2008.
Eric has trouble remembering what he had for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah, I've done so many. I've done so many events and so many conferences, and I've taken people out to so many different places and showed them where things have happened. I lose track of a lot of that stuff, so I have to apologize.
Okay, well,
I might have taken people out to that location. I might not have. I just can't remember.
Yeah.
I've done so much over the years. It's a big blur.
Yeah.
I don't know, and it's just myself. I have to deal. Like I had to call off to work tomorrow. Because my anal glaucoma acted up again. Yeah, I can't see my ass going to work tomorrow. Anyway.
Well, I would like to visit that gas pipeline area, if nothing else, to distribute the bulletproof vest to the local Big Feet there.
Well, it was very close to that pipeline. I got the thermal of the bear during the first Pennsylvania camping adventure, and that was really cool. It was the first time I was testing the Seek thermal. Yeah. And now it's even improved because now there's audio. So on the older version of the app, you couldn't get audio, but now you can get the thermal with audio.
Right.
And I remember very distinctly, we heard something rustling around. And I pull out the thermal, and by the time I get it focused up, it's standing up looking at us. So I see this tall upright object next to a tree going, what the hell is that? And then all of a sudden it drops down and it kind of lumbers off. And really, when you blow it up on a good high, definition screen, you actually see it, kind of like jog off, like I'm getting the hell out of here. These people are crazy. but it's a great wildlife area. And I remember the one, the one from last year. We had that car come out of nowhere. Remember, I don't know if you were with us, Eric, at the time, but we're sitting there at the point where you go the one way, there's the gas line, and the other way is up the hill, and it's a very steep climb. And then all of a sudden, out of that area, that wooded area in the middle, came this truck. Like, what the hell? So there's
I remember that.
Like, where did that come from? So, but a very, very bizarre area, to say the least. It's
that's actually part of State Game Lands 51 in Pennsylvania, and there's been countless sightings in that area. There've been we get constant reports of people hearing things from that area. That's why when we do the camping adventure, that's why I take groups up there, because there's been footprints found. Last year, Jay Bachochin and Brian Parsons went out and they found a track out on that gas well line in the mud, and I've heard screams and howls coming out of those forest wood knocks. We've had a lot of success with having experiences up there of possible Bigfoot interaction, and that's why I take people up there, because it's always been an active area.
And I think to the if you go to the Game Lands 51, just to the southwest of that is Jumonjeville Glen, and that area has had its own experiences as well. And I remember being in Jumonjeville Glen years and years ago, not as a Bigfooter, but as a person that was very interested in colonial history, and I was actually on going out to Braddock's gravesite. Original gravesite, which was in the middle of a trail in that particular glen, and it's a really, really cool area, and even there's just so much. I think not only is there the that kind of like Pennsylvania Triangle type of thing going on, where all kinds of weird stuff, but the history of that place is phenomenal. Fort Necessity is just around the corner, and for those who don't know, Fort Necessity was a fort that was actually inadvertently being commanded by, I think, Lieutenant George Washington at the time, or Lieutenant Colonel George Washington at the time, after his general Braddock was killed. And actually, it was a defeat for Washington. He had to surrender to the French. But just a really neat area. I mean, and what they have done with Fort Necessity and their visitor center and their museum is just top notch. So if anything, if anybody's out for any good Squatch hiking, and you're kind of bored with that for a little bit, stop down one of those places. It's really cool. And then, of course, you have it escapes me right now, the caves.
The Laurel Caverns.
Laurel Caverns, that's it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I mean, that's a real cool place to go to. It's one of the few places where if you want to, you sign a waiver, get yourself a helmet and a light, and you can actually go into parts of the cave that are not lighted, and it's up to you to make your way through it. So really,
the Laurel Caverns is haunted too. So.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Earlier when you were talking about the thermal video you got, the Kite Squatches asked. He said, "Steve, could that have been a bear you saw on thermal?" I think you probably need to go ahead and clarify that if you can.
Yeah, it was a bear. Yeah, absolutely.
It was a bear. Yeah,
it was a bear. Yeah, that's why I said when I first looked at it, it was standing upright, and I was like, "Whoa, what?" It kind of, by the time I got it focused and looked at, it kind of startled all of us because there was somebody else watching the thermal, and they were like, "Whoa, it's standing up there looking at us." And then, it was really hard to tell exactly coming down, but we did notice that it kind of lumbered off at a very low thing. So there was a lot of excitement and buzz in the camp. But actually, I took it back to the camp the next day. The next day, I kind of sat down with, actually, of all people, Trapper from Mountain Monsters, and we started looking at it, and he's like, "No, that's a bear." And I go, "I agree." But he was the first one. Actually, he was the first one to call it. That's a bear. And without a doubt, it was a bear. And when you put it up on the big screen, because I was looking at it on the phone, put it up on the big screen, it's very clearly a bear. And, in fact, you see it when it first comes up. But it was just like you're pulling it out, you're trying to get your eyes adjusted to the bright light of the thing because you've been in darkness, and now you're looking at a light, so your eyes are adjusting. You're trying to get that focus ring to get in nice and crisp on it. And, you miss that. And next thing you know, by the time you get it focused, okay, oh, my God, it's standing there. And you don't know at first what it is until you really get it back and start parsing through it. So.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is, though, if you've got a target, make sure you get it. Make sure you get it on thermal first, and then you can justify or verify what it is later.
You can always hash it out later. Again, if anybody wants to call in and join the discussion, our phone number is area code 646-668-2982. 646-668-2982. We're here with Eric Altman on Blog Talk Radio. So, Eric, out of all the sightings, or out of all the experiences that you've had, and I know you've had more than a handful. Of course, you've been at it forever. What was, out of that particular area, the Chestnut Ridge area, which one is the one that stands out for you?
Wow, there's so many to choose from. I think one of the most exciting experiences that I had took place in Fayette County, not far from Benner's, and actually not far from the Laurel Caverns. We received a report from, at the time he was a deputy constable for Pennsylvania, and now he's a full state constable. And he was working with a security guard night shift, and they were guarding a property where they build those windmill towers, the electric combine windmills that generate power, and it was a construction site to build and maintain these windmill, huge 60, 70, 80-foot high windmills. I'm sure you've seen them. And he was guarding the property, and they had different people that would rotate in the night shift when there wasn't anybody there working. And he contacted me to let me know that he and his security crew were having some strange experiences at this location. It's a very remote location, way up on the mountain. And there's a couple houses that are probably within about a mile or so from this location, but for the most part, it's pretty remote. And during their patrolling at night, they would have things happen. They would hear things. They would hear screams. They would hear wood knocks. They would hear grunts and growls coming from the surrounding forest. And this, at this time, this construction area was probably a good maybe 200 yards long by probably 200 to 300 yards wide, and it was filled with maintenance sheds and trailers and porta-johns and all kinds of moving equipment, building equipment, construction equipment, and they would sit in the parking lot and just monitor this. And every night they'd hear stuff come up to the perimeter of this construction site and bang on trees and growl and howl and scream, and they didn't know what it was. They didn't have a clue. Well, I said, well, this would be a great opportunity for me to bring some of our group up and investigate and see if we can hear anything and maybe kind of validate what you're hearing or let you know if it's just common wildlife, or because they were pretty shaken up about it. And we went up and we talked to some of the night shift crew that worked there, the security guards, and they all relayed their stories and experiences they had, and some pretty crazy ones. One guy didn't believe the phenomenon at all, so he stuck his head out his truck window and screamed. And about 10 or 15 minutes later, something walked up to the back of his pickup truck and screamed at him, and he had enough and quit. So this stuff was going on, and just 2 days before we were set to go up for that weekend to start our investigation, the deputy constable called me and said, I know what's making all these noises up here at the construction site. And I said, oh, really? What did you find out? He goes, I saw one of the things. I said, what did you see? And he told me that he was sitting in his vehicle, and he was just kind of right there in the middle of the parking lot, watching the grounds, making sure that nobody was prowling or trespassing. And he saw a shadow moving along the ground about 75 yards from where he was sitting. And as he was sitting there watching this shadow kind of creep along the ground, it came from the back of this the only way to describe it is it was like an electrical board where they had all the electrical wires from the poles run down to this board, and they ran from these different electrical outlets into the different sheds and trailers to power them up. And he said he saw this dark shadow stand up, and it leaned its head out from behind this electrical board and started looking at him. And he was looking at it, and he could see it under the pole light, this thing, hair-covered thing, standing on two legs, playing peekaboo with him. It would lean out and look at him and then pull its head back, and lean out and look at him, pull its head back, and he was just stunned, literally stunned. And he watched it for a few seconds, and he pulled its head back in, it dropped down and disappeared into the darkness. And he never saw it again. So he was really shaken up at this time. And being he's a law enforcement officer, he was a deputy constable, I knew this guy wouldn't BS to me because he could get in trouble with his job, and he didn't want to lose his job. So I went up there with the crew. We took probably about 10 or 15 people up to investigate because it is such a big construction site. And we set up people around the perimeter of the construction site, and we did a two-night investigation. And the first night was pretty quiet. We didn't hear much of anything. I think maybe we heard one or two distant howls, but that was about it. The second night, all hell broke loose. And I to this day, I still find it hard to believe what I experienced that night. But we had screams, howls, wood knocks. We had something walking the perimeter of the construction site. I went after it, and I was probably within 10 or 15 feet of it, and it was in the tree line. And as I started going into the tree line, you could hear it quickly backing away from me, and then it turned and ran the lengthwise away from me of the construction site. And I ran after it, and people were trying to follow me to try to keep up with me. And when we got to the very far back corner, I had wood knocks happening on my right. I had wood knocks happening on my left. In my night vision monocular, I could see something standing in the tree line, but I couldn't really tell exactly what it was because it was moving back and forth between the trees. It went on for almost all night long. We actually got some pretty good recordings of it on the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society website a few years ago. We posted them, and I think it's on the Keystone Bigfoot Project site now. But we got audio recordings of it. Several people there who were non-believers left there just totally shook up by what they experienced and what they heard. To be honest with you, if there is such a thing as Bigfoot, and I think we can all pretty much agree that there's something out there, there were several of them at this site, and they were making noise all night long. They were letting us know that they were there. They were not happy that we were there. They were throwing rocks. They were banging wood, screaming at us.
Wow.
They got the coyotes all worked up at one point. My nephew at the time was probably about 14, and we were walking across the parking lot, and this thing let off 3 loud screams. My nephew grabbed my arm and looked at me and said, "Uncle Eric, did you hear that?" And I had this big smile on my face, and I said, "Yep, I sure did." And he looked at me and said, "Is that what I think it was?" And I said, "What do you think it was?" And he just looked at me.
That's priceless.
So, just to have my nephew experience that, and everybody else that was, Reverend Tim Shaw was with us, and Steve, you know Tim Shaw.
Yeah.
He wasn't really a big believer in Bigfoot until that night, and he walked away scratching his head wondering what he had heard and experienced. So that was probably the most intense experience we had in a one-night investigation up on the Chestnut Ridge. It just blew my mind.
Wow. And it's amazing. I myself have had something similar, not exact, not on that scale, obviously, but yeah, I mean that is awesome. I mean, I hear that kind of thing, and it kind of like, man, I wish I was there. And I think anybody that's there. But anyway, we have a question in chat for you, Eric, and this is from Kite Squatch, and the hang on one second. Is this wind farm now operational now, and have there been continued activity there? I wondered if the large wind turbines produce infrasound, and if it's that gets their attention of these creatures.
Well, the construction site has been shut down. There are people that still go there on occasion. They've put up a very high chain link fence around the entire perimeter of the site. I think they use that location now for just storage. But the windmills are operational. There are probably about 6 or 7 of them in the mountains and the forest around that area. There have been continued sightings. We had a sighting report there in 2016. Right after the first Bigfoot camping adventure, we got a report of 2 Bigfoots crossing the road within a half a mile from that construction site. I don't know if they create infrasound. They do make a noise. You can definitely hear them when you're up there on the ridge and you're close to one of these towers. You can definitely hear the noise they put off. But if it's infrasound they're making as well, I don't know. But if that is a possibility, then it definitely could be attracting those Bigfoot to stick around the area.
Gotcha. I mean, very interesting.
Cool.
Wow.
Did you get Digger's question there, Steve? He's got one up chat a little bit, Digger Dog.
Why don't you go for that one, Chris?
Eric, is there Digger Dog wants to know, is there any place in Pennsylvania that you won't go because you think it's too dangerous?
No,
3 Mile Island?
I've been all maybe Philadelphia.
South Philly.
But no, I've been all across the state. I've investigated all 4 corners of the state. In the central part of the state, there hasn't been any place that I really haven't gone to investigate. I think the city's probably the most dangerous place to go to, but out in the forest now.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, I've been to Philly. That's well. I'm getting something a little chicanery going on behind me, so we may be getting a caller here in a minute. So I don't know who it is, but I always get a little worried when there's chicanery going on behind my back in the studio. So I'll let y'all know. I'll let y'all know when they call.
Steve, when you make it down here when you make it down here to Pennsylvania and we hit the woods, I'll take you up and show you that windmill location, that construction site. Show you that.
That would be awesome. Really, that stuff. I call it stuff of legend, and like every area has. I mean. We've had like the Abear Road where former police officer Brian Goslin had his encounter. That's so famous. I mean that location is like legend of places of lore and legend, and it's always a blast to like visit those areas where these epic things have happened, and even though the chance of something maybe happening again at that particular point is kind of slim. It's just really cool to sit there and relive it in your own mind of what happened there of that particular night. It's always a very enjoyable experience to do that. I
wouldn't mind going there and sit in my truck and maybe scream out the window every half hour or so.
And one of the neighbors will come out and start shooting at you.
Yeah. Just like home.
That's right. Chris is used to that. He talks about he talks about my lifestyle with the drive-by shootings. He's they have drive-by cow tippings in his neighborhood now.
In New York, people will shoot you for your money. In Kentucky, people will just shoot you.
That's right. But so Eric, have you ever felt in all your years that, hey, you know what? I think they're going to kill me. Have you ever been really in physical fear of these things at all? Because this event, you're running after them, so it sounded like you were pretty emboldened. But have you ever felt in danger while you were out in the?
No, not really. I think the closest to feeling in danger, maybe would have been Clearfield, Pennsylvania. I can't remember what year it was. I think it might have been 2011 or 2012. There was another cut through a pipeline, gas well line, where there had been sightings a few years prior, and our group would go up to this area and on Rockton Mountain, and we'd sit out on a pipeline, and for like 3 or 4 weekends straight, we'd go up to this pipeline, myself, Dave Rupert, Dwayne Pintoff, a bunch of we took Sharon Lee up there one weekend because she found it hard to believe that we were having the experiences we were having. Something in the woods was throwing rocks at us, and all night long, basically. It would go on for 10 or 15 minutes, and it would stop, and then it would start up again in 10 or 15 minutes. And something in the woods was throwing rocks at us. And at that time, I didn't have a thermal FLIR, so I wasn't able to see other than with a monocular night vision. But they were throwing rocks at us, and I remember this clear as day. We pulled into the little pull-off area, and we were all getting our gear out and our research equipment out, and Dwayne pulled out a hard hat, and he put a hard hat on. And we all kind of looked at him and laughed, and we were like, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I don't want to get hit in the head with a rock." And he was probably the smartest of all of us because they started throwing rocks that night. And on this gas well line behind us, there was the Game Commission set up this deer fence area to keep the deer either in or out of this particular section of woods. So we had a fence behind us. And across the gas well on the opposite side of the gas well was very thick forest, a lot of brush, briars, mountain laurel, and it was really hard to see in there, but that's where the rocks were coming from. And you could hear them bouncing off the post behind us, off the metal link fence. I remember Sharon Lee was getting something out of her bag. I think she was getting a flashlight or digging for something in one of her research bags, and she said, "Oh, my God, I just had a rock just miss my head by inches." And we heard that happen. We were like, well, maybe it's a good idea that Dwayne brought his hard hat, and it might not be such a bad idea to bring one next time.
Yeah.
But that's the only time that I've ever felt any source of danger. I've never been charged at or I've had rocks thrown at me on multiple occasions, but I've never felt threatened or in danger where I felt like we had to leave.
That is just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Even, the creepiest time, I'll tell you, the creepiest time I've ever had it was when I was being paralleled on both sides of the road by something as I'm walking down this dirt road. That probably was the creepiest because all of a sudden I realized that I could be cut off from either my vehicle or the campsite at any time. Anyway, it wasn't necessarily an action, it was just a tactical disadvantage that really made me nervous about it. And I turned around and went back to the car real fast. I didn't run, I didn't want to make it, but you could hear them walking up and down. And then after a while, I got kind of used to it in this one particular area. So the funny thing was I had my son, who at the time was in school. He eventually got his bachelor's in fish and wildlife management, and one of his good friends is also a student there in fish and wildlife management. And I sent them down the very same road, and they came back a little while later, and they're like, you know what? Something was following us on both sides of the road. I'm like, welcome to the party, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, it eventually got to the point where, well, you know, just like I really think, although you were in fear, I think really you were afraid of just getting, you know, clipped. I don't think you were in fear of your lives. I think after a while you realize, hey, they're just messing with us, and you know, maybe on the off chance that they hit one of us, it'll cause some injury. And I really think from the sounds of it, that if they were really didn't want you there, they would start screaming and actually hitting you guys. And I think instead they were just having some fun with you, probably getting a kick out of it. Which
they probably were. I mean, I found it kind of humorous that the first weekend that it happened, and these things were, you could hear the rock coming through the trees and hitting the fence post behind us or hitting the metal linked chain links. You could hear it tinging off of it, making that metal sound. And the first time I went up with Dwayne and Dave Rupert, and there was only a few of us there, we were like, no one's ever going to believe this, you know. And I told a couple people, and they were like, oh, yeah, you really had rocks thrown at you. And I said, well, come up with us and see if you experience it. And when these other people came up and experienced it themselves, they were like, oh, you weren't lying. And I'm like, no, this stuff really happened. Especially we brought Sharon Lee up because she was kind of like curious, but I think she was kind of like in disbelief almost. You know, like, oh, come on, guys, this stuff doesn't happen weekend after weekend. And when we went up, we took her up, and I remember her in her bag, and she said, oh, my God, that thing was just inches from my head. And I just kind of laughed, and I'm like, see, I told you. But, yeah, I agree with you. I think if they were just messing with us, I don't think they wanted us there, but if they really were angry that we were there, they would have bluff charged us or thrown something to hit somebody or started screaming or really become aggressive. I think they were just messing around with us.
Yeah, I think it was pure entertainment for them, to tell you the truth.
Probably.
Yeah. You know what? It would have been funny because I would have brought an umbrella. Stand with an umbrella. Okay, you big hairy bastards, throw away now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and watch them clip me with a straight shot right under the umbrella. That would be my luck. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've had some well, I will tell you that last fall, late October, myself, one of my team members from the Rochester area who was up there, and I don't think Stacy really was in the area close enough to realize what was going on. Maybe she was, but we had a handful of pebbles thrown at us by something, and they came skittering off the top of the vehicle, kind of got in Mike's face a little bit. To me, I was under the hood of the car, under the back, you know, the canopy there, so it actually skidded over the top of my head on the canopy, and I mean, I heard it like, and I saw the thing hitting Mike in the face, and all of a sudden he's like, we're getting, and we unfortunately he didn't have his GoPro going. I don't know if we had a recording of it going. We're still, because we were just starting to get some of our equipment out, and I know some batteries died on him, and I was putting new batteries in my stuff, and all of a sudden it was like, shh. We're like, where the hell did that come from? And that was it. That was the only, other than a few sounds that were really, you know, nothing recordable or nothing really outstanding, but a few weird type of bellowing type sounds, nothing loud or decibel-wise or anything like that. That was really the activity for that night. But the whole rock throwing thing was like, and as soon as it was there, it was done. It was over with. It was almost like it was just kind of trying to keep us at a tactical disadvantage or so. I don't understand why he did it, but they came out of nowhere, and I still can't explain it.
Well, let me ask you guys a question, and this has been kind of perplexing me because I've experienced this several times, and I'm sure you have too. Have you guys figured out the correlation, or if there is a correlation between these creatures and coyotes?
Well, I can speak of experience.
Okay.
And I've been to the Adirondacks, and I've heard vocalizations followed by coyotes, followed by, I have been in Vermont, same thing. And one of the weirdest things I ever heard, I was in LBL in Kentucky. and I remember hearing this huge howl. Wasn't coyote. Then I heard the coyotes yelping, or jib-jabbering, and then we heard something like a coyote being strangled almost. It was screaming, and then all of a sudden, boom, dead silence. Not another thing the rest of the night. And that probably was the most uncanny thing. Do I think there is some correlation? Yes, I do, and I think there's a good reason why. Not because necessarily what we've seen in our own behavior with the Sasquatch is that we've known for years they've had a natural propensity not to like big dogs, German Shepherds especially. Mm-hmm. Well, what does a coyote look like? What does a wolf look like? They look like German Shepherds, give or take. Maybe a husky, give or take. And they are apex predators, just like a bear. So I'm sure they're not too fond of bears either. So I think coyotes being the most populous and the most vocal of, the aforementioned creatures, I think that's why we were able to actually correlate some of the stuff that goes on. And I might add, I also heard that in Wisconsin as well, now that I'm thinking about it. The howl and the coyotes yip in and then howls, and it's almost like an exchange. Now I don't know if they're going after them to eat them, or perhaps and some of the stuff that I read over the years, I perhaps think that maybe they're following them to snatch up their kill, or perhaps the coyotes are following them to basically feast on the carrion that's left over from the Sasquatch.
Right, the cleanup.
Yeah. So it could be one or the other. How many times have we heard about, a Sasquatch or a hunter going after a deer he dropped, and he gets to the deer, and the deer's been dragged off or gone.
Right.
So, I'm not sure where that necessarily falls in that relationship, but it certainly could be one or the other. Chris, I don't know.
I've had a interesting experience back in 2010. Me and my buddy Scott and his son were out trekking into a pretty hot area, and this was the day that I got that what I call the hillside video, and I had seen a group of creatures up on the hillside, all kind of clumped together, and we turned around and left. Didn't want to stick around too long because Scott had his young son with him. And we were about, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 yards away on the way back from where we had seen these creatures. And we heard a group of coyotes. And, I mean, they were having a fit. And it sounded like to me that it was coming back from the same area where we had just left. And we'd stopped for a minute, and I think I got the coyotes' howls and stuff on another video. Of course, it was getting dark by that time. And I said, Scott was saying, "What's that?" And I said, "That's coyotes." And just kept on going. But that was within, maybe 10 minutes of a sighting. But other than that, the only other odd thing I've heard a yell at night, a scream, and then coyotes would start barking afterwards, howling and carrying on. Which the call was not a coyote. It was just an outright guttural, one of those you don't want to hear again screams. And then immediately after that, the coyotes from a distance away started howling and barking and carrying on. It got like a hoot owl would get them stirred up. It got them stirred up.
Yeah, I've heard it too. In several different states, I've heard the howls followed by the coyotes yipping and barking and going crazy, and then you'd hear a howl mixed in with the coyotes barking and yelping, and I've heard it several times in several different states like you have, Steve, and I've often wondered if the coyotes follow the creatures around and kind of clean up after the Sasquatch kill, or if perhaps the Sasquatch follows the pack of coyotes around because they know coyotes also, as you mentioned, are apex predators and they like to kill, and maybe the Bigfoot comes in and takes the kill before the coyotes can. Or if they're just natural known enemies. I've often wondered that myself.
and from the whole propensity not to like dogs, I can absolutely see that. I think that's a big reason why. So, I guess they're not in reach. Well, I was actually trying to get my buddy on the phone that had the rocks thrown at his puss, but he is not here. So, either that or BTR switchboard's not working. It could be either one.
Oh, go figure.
Go figure. But hey, Chris, can you believe we only have 15 minutes left?
Well, the time is flying by. When you got a good guest like Eric, though, it does fly by.
Absolutely. While we're on we have a brief pause here for a minute. I just want to do a couple of program notes, get them out before we finish up. But as you know, that in okay, I just got a message. So as you know, we're having Seth Breedlove on, Cliff Barrickman on, and we're going to have some filmmakers on this month. And next month, we even have some more exciting stuff for you going on. And it's just we've been working at a tremendous rate. We are booked through May for this show. So we have guests coming to you, and as time goes on, you'll start seeing. And I think that you can see some of the future episodes if you just go to the Squatchdetective radio show page. And I also want to say we finally announced a date for Extreme Paranormal Radio, which is going to be on April 26th, featuring Stacy Horton and Michelle Wagner, Saratoga Spiritualist, and they'll be talking all things paranormal, ufology, demonology, all that fun stuff. So they'll be doing that on this very network on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. So be looking out for that. That'll be coming up very soon. And as their producer, I'll be having a production meeting next week with them because I have to run the boards. So, and as you can hear, my voice is getting a little bit crackling because I've been talking all weekend long. And and I don't know how many times I had to point to a cast or point to a picture or talk about this or that. And one of the most disturbing and prevalent things is Bigfoot an alien? No. And
well, I mean, you really don't know. I mean, it could be an alien. Who knows?
Could be. Well, if I'm really conspiracy there, now follow this one, Eric. You're gonna like this one.
Okay.
Okay. So if Bigfoot's an alien, right? Because it's been seen around, coming out of, and being near UFOs. So we all remember the 70s, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. What's the average lifespan of a cow? Maybe about 10, 12 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So all the cows that were alive in the 70s, they're all dead by now. I mean, they're not 40 years old.
Yep.
But they were seen by UFOs too during all those cattle mutilation things. So I got thinking, what if the cows are aliens too? And if the cows are aliens, we've been drinking their milk. We're all under mind control.
Oh wow!
So that's my conspiracy theory. I don't know. So I know everybody's like, "What the hell is he smoking?"
I really like talking to people and listening to stories and stuff and their experiences and encounters and stuff. But there's always that one guy that comes up to you and says, "Hey man, I saw a UFO and landed and Bigfoot stepped out." That's the kind of guy you want to walk like a wide circle around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, dude, but that's the next conference.
No, that's the guy you put your arm around and say, "You know what? I got a guy in California that loves Diet Snapple," and you can tell him all that.
Joan, get me a Snapple.
Yeah, there's always going to be that one guy, or that one lady, It's going to be something like that.
Wow, I tell you what, the soundboard is not working today.
All right.
But anyway, but Eric, you filled that in very nicely. So.
Oh, thanks.
Because I actually have that one on my soundboard. But yeah, that's the guy you put your arm around. I don't know. I was going to say the other guy. He's back to selling cars again, so we'll leave him alone. But anyway, Eric, it's 10 minutes left. What are the plans for the future? I know you got you got something called the PA Cryptozoology Society, which I'm part of. Tell the folks where they can find out about this group and what it's about.
It's basically, for 14 years I ran the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, and I got out of it in 2014, and took a couple years off to focus on family life and more important things, priorities and stuff like that. So took some time away, and even though I took time off, and even when I was with the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, we were always getting reports of other strange cryptids. And we basically focused on Bigfoot with the PBS and investigating those cases. But I kind of wanted to start looking into other cryptids as well and seeing, if there's anything to them, because there's quite a number of Thunderbird sightings here in Pennsylvania. And, of course, there's Raystown Ray, the famous aquatic lake monster down in Raystown, Pennsylvania. And there's other different cryptids that have been seen and reported. Stan Gordon fields several reports a year of different types of creatures. So I thought, why don't I put together a group of experienced researchers who are into Bigfoot, into cryptids from all across the country, and see if we can't try to solve some of these answers here in Pennsylvania. And that's what I did. And it's more of, instead of looking just one cryptid like Bigfoot, we're looking at other cryptids as well, and we field reports when they come in. Mainly so far, there's been nothing but Bigfoot reports coming in, but when other cryptid reports come in, we have consultants that we work with, and we have investigators that are, boots to the ground, and we'll check out the cases and see if there's anything to them. So that's what the group is basically about. And they can find it on the internet at pacryptosociety.net or pacryptosociety.com. And we're on Facebook. We have a small group on Facebook, which I just restarted. And we've gotten a couple reports that I've looked into and a couple investigators have looked into. Of course, like I said, they're Bigfoot reports. But we do look into all different types of cryptids and see if there's any validity to them, or maybe somebody had a misidentification and we can show them that what they saw was a known animal, or if in fact it was an unknown animal that they experienced. So that's basically what the group is, and we've been around now for a couple of years. I think we started in 2016, so we've been around for about 2 years now.
Wow. And I will say I'm very pleased and honored to be part of that group as well. So
yeah, I'm glad you're a part of it too, because we definitely can use your experience and your Squatchdetective sleuthing abilities. So we're glad you're part of the group too.
I do have this uncanny knack to dig up something totally obscure that's pertinent to something for whatever reason. That's how in the hell did I do this? I promise you, it's not any skill, folks. It's just pure dumb luck, I think. But I don't know. I'm kind of spent today, so I'm getting a little slap happy. But
I haven't been to Pennsylvania in a while. I'm thinking about making a trip up there. The last time I went, it wasn't too pleasant. My wife sent me up there. She bought a car off of eBay, and of course I had to go collect it. So I flew from Louisville to Philly, and got off there at the airport, and had to take a train from there to what was it? Someplace in New Jersey. I rode a train from Philadelphia to Trenton, New Jersey. Yeah,
that's not too far.
Picked up the car there, yeah. But I mean, for somebody from the country, it was a very educational experience for me.
Kind of reminds me of the little Amish kid on Witness. Remember the movie?
Yeah. It was really cool. When I rode the train, it was I'd never ridden on like a passenger train before, and I guess that's what it was, or some kind of tram or whatever. But I hopped on that thing, and I I saw people just like you see on TV. You know, like they had a gang of young people on there, and they were like harassing people. And it was really cool. It was like a movie. I was there.
I remember that trip. I remember Chris calling me going, Steve, you know they have these big machines. You put some money in it, and a soda comes out.
But it was a really cool experience, though. You know, I really enjoyed that. Those kids running up and down the aisle there. I mean, I call them kids, but they were probably 19 to 23 years old. Spike hairdos, black leather. Of course, I was wearing a black leather jacket too, so I felt akin to them that way.
Yeah, but the rebel flag on the back. No.
Yeah, I remember when it looked like the leader. He looked over at me. And I reached inside my jacket in the left breast and looked at him really mean, and he didn't say a word.
What were you going to do, pull out a piece of beef jerky?
No, I didn't have anything because, you know, you couldn't carry guns on the airport at the airline. So no, I left it at home. I hate that. Don't make it without my handgun.
Oh, that's too funny.
But he didn't know that. He didn't know that.
Well, I don't know, Chris. You can give somebody an awful cross look sometimes.
Well, I can't help it. I'm ugly. You know, I just look at you, and people think I'm looking at you mean, but no, that's just me.
You have a great face for radio. What can I say?
That's exactly right. That's why you don't see me on TV.
Eric's like, what did I get myself into?
You're on your own, Steve. You're on your own.
No, I enjoyed Pennsylvania, though. I really did. Driving through it on the way back, it was nice.
That's why they call it Pennsyltucky. We're not in Pennsylvania now. We're now in Pennsyltucky. Anyway. Well, anyway, Eric, I want to thank you for being on this week. And it was a lot of fun. Well, you know, like I say, once we start closing in on the whole episode of The Creature, we will have you back on and probably get Dave Drag on, and we'll talk about it on the whole show, and we'll do the big reveal. So, and the reasons why.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, guys, for having me on tonight. It's been good to talk to you guys
our
again.
Pleasure. Anytime, my brother. And for
appreciate it.
Me and Chris, we want to wish everybody a great and safe week. Next week we'll be on, I believe next week is Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot. So that'll be a big show and a fun show. And, the last time we had Cliff on was a day before Finding Bigfoot premiered. And here we are a little bit shy of a month before Finding Bigfoot does its big sign-off on its 10th season. So really, and if we got kind of off track tonight, folks, I apologize. We've had a long weekend. Both Chris and I actually have, and we've had a lot of fun, and hopefully our little antics gave somebody a chuckle out there. But it is what it is sometimes, and we're always great to talk about crypto and Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and tonight definitely was paid off with a lot of great stories and stuff. So, again, on behalf of me and Chris, everybody have a safe week, prosperous week. God bless. And, of course, always keep on squatching. We'll catch you all next week, 9 p.m. Eastern here on blogtalkradio.com/Squatchdetective, Squatch Detective Radio. Catch you all next week.
Thank you for listening to Squatch Detective Radio. Join us each week on Blog Talk Radio, Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern, as your hosts, veteran Bigfoot researchers, Steve Culls and Chris Bennett, bring you guests from around North America, exploring the mystery of the beast known as Bigfoot.